Would like to welcome you all here today to the annual general meeting to review the 2011-2012 financial statements for the Sliammon First Nation. So the plan for the evening is to have Linda Signoret here over to my right to review the consolidated financial statements of 2011, 2012, and then we'll that'll be the first on our agenda, and we'll work through our agenda. But in the interest of time, and I think there looks like there's some warm food over there, I would just like to put a request out there to see if there's an elder that would like to share a prayer with us to get the evening started.
Dem say who hegus also was Bob Emmett. Kuquatom to air jam at ho oak tam serious that you can disguise the Xnums. Oi.
Welcome you all to the 2011-2012 financial audit review. Just have a couple of quick introductions. But before I do the quick introductions, I think that was a pretty great light dinner. My plate wasn't exactly light. There's too many options, but hands up to the cooks and all the people that did the preparing. I understand there was a few different groups. So for the evening here, we're going to have Rod chair the general meeting here tonight, so I'll hand it over to Rod pretty quick. But I just wanted to do a couple of quick introductions. Back in the far corner over there, we have our recent hire of our Chief Financial Officer, Stephen Hunter. Steve, you just wave there. So Steve will be looking after the financial end of the world. So reason for having this Chief Financial Officer is to have the ability to drop into any Sliammon entity if there's any information required. We kind of lived in our own little silos for a while there, where it was tough and difficult to share information. And I think we're moving past that with introducing this new, I won't even say authority, I'll call it position. And so just having the ability to drop in, because regardless of what entity you work for or organization in Sliammon, it's all connected and you're all Sliammon. And this is what Linda will go over tonight with the consolidated financial statements. Another introduction is Terry Robertson, SDC manager. Terry, welcome Terry. And we have Jenny. Jenny here has been probably the happiest person, or maybe other than Linda, to see this audit done. I know council's pretty happy to see it done, but Jenny did a lot of the work on the audit as well. So I introduced Linda Signoret already, who will walk us through the consolidated financials, and oh, sorry, Judith. Judith, I meant to introduce you, but we have Judith, who is working with the Chief and Council, helping getting the records and everything in order, and will be a great resource to the nation. So just with that, I will hand the mic over to Rod, and once again, welcome, and we will work through tonight's agenda.
Agenda is the minutes from last year, which will be the first official thing we'll do. And just before that, just a few things. I imagine that most of you got a notice that went out about this meeting. And just to sort of make sure it's understood what this meeting is for, because last year it got a little off track. This meeting really is about financial statements. And that's all it's about. So what we're here to do tonight is to review, question, bring things that are to do with the financial statements for the year ended 2012. Okay, so I'm going to sit down now and chair from my chair. So the first order of business is to approve the minutes from last year's AGM. And there is a set there that hopefully you picked up on the way in. And if you'd like me to give you a couple of minutes to read, then that's fine. If everybody has already read them, we can vote on them. If somebody would like to move to accept the minutes, that would be wonderful. Marlene moves. Can I have a seconder? And if we could have a show of hands, all those in favor? Yep. Okay. And opposed? So that's carried. Thank you. So next on the agenda is the presentation of the consolidated statements. So Linda has already been introduced, so I will pass the mic on to Linda. Sorry, I missed something. Is there anybody has any business arising from the minutes from last year? Is there anything anybody wants to bring up from those minutes and discuss? Okay, thanks. I'll pass it over to Linda.
My name is Linda Signore. I'm a certified general accountant, and I've been the band's auditor for a number of years now. You should have a couple of documents with you. One is a two-sided, one-page little summary that I prepared. And the other one is the consolidated financial statements, March 31, 2012. These financial statements include the summary financial statements and all the notes, but they don't include every department's schedule because we didn't want to have to kill enough trees to give you all one of these. However, if you would like to see the department schedules, then I think you can just contact Rod or Steve, and you can have those available to you. So the first thing I want to talk about is what entities are covered by these consolidated financial statements. So they include all the band programs, the Health Board Society, and the Treaty Society. They are consolidated, so these statements show all of the assets of those three organizations all consolidated together. So when you look at the bank accounts, the bank number is all those three entities' bank accounts combined. When you look at receivables, it's all of their receivables all combined. And the same with all of their other assets and liabilities are all consolidated. With respect to Sliammon Timber Products Limited and Sliammon Development Corp., those are for-profit corporate subsidiaries. And the proper way of accounting for those types of entities is by what's called modified equity basis. So that means that they show that these consolidated statements show the band's investment in those entities and any advances to them on their balance sheet. And then in the notes to the financial statements, it shows summaries of the financial statements of those entities. So their assets and liabilities are not consolidated. They're accounted for by what's called modified equity. First of all, I'd like you to have a look at the audit report. Which is page 3 of the consolidated statements. And essentially, the last paragraph is the important one. And it says, in my opinion, these financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the Sliammon First Nation as of March 31, 2012, and the results of operations, changes in net debt, cash flows of the Sliammon First Nation for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that's what you call a clean audit report, an unqualified audit report. The next page, just for your information, the Department of Indian Affairs or Department of Indian and Northern Affairs Development Canada is called AANDC, require a separate report, which is not an audit report, on two schedules. One of salary and honoraria of elected officials, and the other one is salary honoraria, it includes travel and other remuneration on senior unelected officials. So this is our review engagement report on those schedules. And again, those detailed schedules are not in this package, but if you wish to see them, you can contact Rod. So, again, these are the financial statements for the year ended March 31, 2012. So that is more than a year ago. And we'll talk about that issue in a bit. If you look page 6 and 7 are the summary statement of operations. So this statement shows all of the revenues and all of the expenditures. The revenues are identified by source, so Indian Affairs, CMHC, other funding organizations, and it's broken down by federal government, provincial government, and other. The band had revenues of $12.2 million, and that's a little bit up from 11.9 the prior year. And that's revenues from all sources. Total expenditures for the year were $11,349,000. And just a little aside in terms of where your funding is coming from, 61% is federal funding, federal government, 13% provincial, and 26% other. And that's pretty comparable to prior years. So of the other revenues I was referring to that make up 26%, just want to point out a couple of things. So that 26% is about $3.2 million. $700,000 of that came in donations from Sliammon Timber Products Limited. So essentially the profit of that company was donated to the band, and that's the $700,000 revenue item you'll see on page 6. On page 6. The band was in a management action plan with AANDC, or Indian Affairs, and as part of that management action plan, they were required to get those funds from the Timber Products Company. The other thing I want to point out with respect to other sources of revenue is that you'll see a line item that is housing rental income, $583,414. That is how much rent the band should have collected if everybody had paid rent. However, in fact, $270,000 of that $583,000 is arrears, is rent that people didn't pay. In terms of the year-end surplus of $621,688 that I was talking about, just giving you a little breakdown between the various entities. So Sliammon First Nation Band Office programs, their ending surplus was $324,858. The Health Board Society deficit for the year, as at March 31, 2012, is $172,119. And the Treaty Society's surplus was $468,929. So that gives you the net surplus, March 31, 2012, of the $621,668. The other point I want to reiterate, which Chief touched on, is that these are consolidated statements with the Health Board and Treaty Society, which, although they do have, their own board of directors, they are still the responsibility of the Chief and Council. And other bands may just operate those things as a different department as opposed to having a separate society. But traditionally, the council has delegated those operations to these societies, but ultimately it's this council that is accountable for them. Then we can have a quick look at the Statement of Financial Position, which is page 5 of the audited statements. So this lists the assets, liabilities, and equity of the band consolidated at March 31, 2012. This format is the format that's required under PSAB standards for governments. I'm not a huge fan of it because I'm used to seeing a balance sheet that actually balances. But it just presents things in a manner to highlight what's called net debt. So if you're having a look at page 5, assets are separated as between financial assets and non-financial assets. So financial assets are, as at March 31, 2012, is a little over $14 million. Non-financial assets, so that's your buildings, your homes, your tables and chairs and computers, that type of thing. Your non-financial assets total $9.4 million. Then on the liability side, which is the group in the middle, you have total liabilities as at that date of $25.2 million. So the biggest component of that is your treaty loan, which is $9.6 million. A couple of things to point out here. There was the referendum held in July 2011, which addressed a couple of things, one of which was in order to get the band's cash flow and financial affairs back into shape. There was a 30-year loan authorized from the lease revenue funding. So that's what the due to investment and taxation accounts, note 18, $2.7 million, that's what that number is. Another number that I'm going to point out to you in a minute is under financial assets due from band members, $1.2 million. And the bulk of that is rental arrears. In terms of what I would call areas of financial problems, rental arrears is certainly a very large one. The rental arrears went up about $270,000 during this fiscal year alone. The other financial problem that I want to make sure you're aware of is you have about $2 million in Bank of Montreal mortgages that were taken out a few years ago to build some homes. And at the time, the plan was that the rents would cover those mortgage payments. In fact, that's totally unrealistic, and the rents from these homes do not cover these mortgage payments. So between those two housing financial problems, the band has cash flow problems. The other area that was a problem at this time was essentially inadequate resources in your finance department. But with that's changed a lot in the last several months, I would say. So we now have both Rod and Steve, who are CMAs. They're both professional accountants. And we've had Jenny, who's been wonderful. But as Clint alluded to, there was a time where you were just trying to play catch up, and it was very difficult. So then on the improvement side, I see two big improvements. One is what I just said, the hiring of new qualified staff, and I understand that you're looking for another one more person to add to the finance department. The other thing is the other referendum item from July 2011, which was the passing of the Sliammon First Nation Financial Administration Law. So that law now essentially should make it impossible for some of the problems that occurred in the finances of the band over the a few-year period. The other point I want to make is I mentioned which entities are covered by this consolidated financial statement, and you have a copy of that. If anybody wants a copy of the individual audited financial statements for Sliammon Treaty Society, Sliammon Health Board Society, Sliammon Timber Products Limited, or Sliammon Development Corp., then those can be made available to you as well. Now I just want to say a few things about, if you look at the audit report, you'll see that the date it was signed was April the 3rd, 2013. We commenced the audit on September the 6th, 2012, which was when we finally received the bank reconciliation from the band. We then spent the next few weeks doing our audit procedures, looking at supporting documentation, doing audit testing. And Irene, who was the CFO at the time, went on vacation on October 1st for 2 weeks. So when she got back from her vacation, we made up a list of queries, problems, missing information, and started working through that with her. Irene left the band on October 26, 2012, and Jenny, bless her heart, was hired as the interim CFO on a part-time basis only. She worked very, very hard, but essentially it took till March 30th to get it all nailed down. And between October 26th and March 30th, when we finally were given the final adjustments to the statements, we made adjustments, well, the band made adjustments, which were several $100,000. So these weren't insignificant little problems. They were fairly significant. I don't anticipate that situation arising again. I know we're still playing a little bit of catch up. So I do see with new qualified people, more people, having $12 million of revenue is not an insignificant amount, especially when you have 100 and some odd departments. And the number of transactions that go into the whole thing to make it work is a huge number. So you really do need people, skilled people. You need policies and procedures. We're working on implementing some stronger controls in the accounting department so that accounts get reconciled on a regular basis instead of just leaving a whole big thing to do at the end of the year that takes forever to do. So I do see a lot of improvement and a lot of potential.
So yeah, the housing is an issue, and there are a lot of issues, and they're not all ours. Some of them are government, and such as the mortgage payments sorry, not the mortgage payments, but the rental on houses that don't have a mortgage. We can't charge rent to SA clients, for example. So that's just one example. Regardless, there are a whole bunch of issues. We have had a couple of sort of retreats to try to really tackle this, and there's a lot of work to do, and we have definitely started on it. We've been dealing with CMHC on some issues, we've been dealing with ANSI on some issues, and we internally have done quite a bit of work, but there is a lot more work to do. So, I mean, without getting into real details, that's all I can tell you right now, but or I could probably tell you more, or, you know, if any of the portfolio holders want to speak to it, that's fine. But we are on it. It's just not going to be an overnight thing.
One thing that I see as a possible, I shouldn't say quick solution, but a better solution than where we're sitting is for us to perhaps maybe have a referendum on paying out those triplexes, because that $2 million mortgage is, I mean, our housing situation was already bad before the triplexes, but throw on top of that a $2 million mortgage, which the rental rates cannot cover. So just thinking out loud here, just wanted to mention that to the audience here, the membership, to just give that some consideration, and perhaps on the June 12th session when we all sit down, well, we can have that question perhaps at the housing table to review that, because the interest rate is not kind. It's a high risk loan, so it's literally credit card rates that I think our interest rate is on that loan. So really high interest rate, and if we can work it out that we can still collect rent for them to pay off that. Just a thought. Sorry, I'm just brainstorming here, but it's not just my idea. It's come from many of the meetings. It's come from the council meetings, and it's been kicked around. So I'm not trying to take credit for the idea. It's been kicked around because it truly is a big problem, and we do have the means to cover it off by way if the community voted in favor of this at a referendum. So an amount like that would have to go to referendum for sure. Currently, right now, because we're still an Indian Reserve band under the Indian Act, we're still eligible for the First Nation Finance Authority. But come April 2015, we'll not be eligible for the First Nation Finance Authority. So we'll be caught in no man's land between the Municipal Finance Authority because we're a treaty nation. We wouldn't be eligible for the Municipal Finance Authority or the First Nation Finance Authority. So we're trying to get onto one of those lists to have access to some of this low cost borrowing. So we have a letter out there, and I've seen it twittered around by other leaders around the province. So we didn't get any traction from anyone leading up to the vote today, but we do have the feelers out there, and we're trying to become either First Nation Finance Authority certified or Municipal Finance Authority. So either one of those, we're trying to get onto one of those. But my thinking was perhaps we could maybe have a review done and look at potentially going to referendum for a loan with the trust. It's not my favorite answer to anything, but it's just a quicker suggestion.
Remember that the housing issue is a long historical issue. It's not something that started 5 years ago. A lot of this debt goes back to 30 years when we started building those first homes. So it's happened over time. Things have changed. Dynamics have changed. Households have changed. You build up a big debt, and maybe the breadwinner passes on. How are you going to collect that money? Social development is not going to pay those arrears. So what are we going to do? Are we going to look at the whole thing and start to forgive some of those rents? It's a big issue that we really need to wrap our mind around. It's not as simple as just going out and collecting those rents. It's got a lot of history behind it, and we need to go back a long ways to try to come up with some kind of a compromise. It has to be a compromise at some point. We can't expect to get blood out of a rock, at some point. So, yeah, just a point.
And my understanding is that these financial statements went into INAC for review a month ago. We just got the audit review letter. It is favorable because of improving financial position. So I believe you are now released out of that management action plan, which is a good thing. Because although it ties you to doing certain things, it's also a heck of a lot of work. So congratulations on that. So if there are no other questions, I'll turn it back over to Rod.
So could I get a motion to accept the audited financial statements for the year ended March 31st, 2012? Marlene? Seconder? Louise? And show of hands, all in favor? And opposed? Thank you. And I have here, I'll hand them out in a minute, it was mentioned that the schedule of honoraria and so on was not included, which it was intended to be. So I had copies made just now, and we'll pass those out because that was supposed to be part of the package. So it's a two-sided, one side is elected officials, one side is unelected. Okay, so I'll pass that out in a minute. The next few items on the agenda we don't intend to go into these statements. As Linda mentioned, they're all consolidated with the others. We have copies of all of these statements here. So the reason they're on the agenda is just in case somebody has specific questions. And anybody who would like those statements, they're right at the end of the table there. The only one that isn't there is health, but there's Treaty Development Corporation and Timber Products are all there for anyone who's interested. So I'll give you a minute to see if anyone has any questions in any of those areas, and we'll deal with them and then move on.
I just want to thank Linda for making the trip up to spend the evening here with us. It's good to get the 2011, 2012 statements complete and look at moving forward on the next set of statements. And we're really going to, I don't know, I think I've said this the last 3-4 years, but this year we're really shooting for reaching that proper deadline. I believe is July 29th. Hoping that we really reach that, and we kind of nudge, wink, wink. We got Steve in the back corner there that will lead the charge. So, and of course with help from Jenny and the finance department in the band.
Very much, Linda. And for all of those of you who are in the audience, somebody last year said to me, "How come the auditor ran out of here right after she was done?" Well, this is sort of her part, and you know, it's perfectly normal for the auditor to leave once they're done their presentation, just so everybody knows that. And also, you know, we pay. So if hello, if nobody has any questions regarding you know, financial statement questions regarding Treaty or DevCore or Timber Products, then as I said, the statements are at the end of the table there. You help yourself, and then we'll move on to the Chief's report.
As I mentioned, the key positions were filled this past year, and the future is looking bright for Sliammon. I don't want to jinx it or anything, but I think this is the first time that we have had all the key positions filled within our nation here, and we really look forward to keeping this group together to do many positive things and keep carrying us down that right path. And you know, I was feeling bad the first year. I thought we were going to do better. The second, the third, the fourth. I think we're on the 5th year now. So things are looking good, and I don't want to jinx it, but we are on the right path. So I won't stay on that too long. Yeah. So a lot of the thank yous go to the council, to the boards of directors, and also the community members for all the support and efforts that they put in. Just wanted to mention quickly, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but I just want to put it on your radar that Betty and I are looking at trying to start a language project here. We've seen a project completed down in Seychelles, and this was a dictionary of their language. And you know, I always think of this every time we see a funeral and we see somebody's elder pass away in their family, and the family then realizes how much important information they've lost because they've lost that loved one, the language, the teachings, and everything. And I thought, you know, if we could do a dictionary here in Sliammon, that would be a way of preserving something and honoring the work of the elders that we're lucky enough to have today, and also in memory and respect of the elders that we've lost in the past. And I think we have a whole bunch of people that are willing to cooperate on this. The School District 47 is willing to cooperate, the Vancouver Island University, and a couple of the key people that we want to strike up a partnership with or a memorandum of understanding with is the Klahoose First Nation and also the Homolko First Nation. Our language is all the same. So looking at doing that, and we'll try to keep you updated. Met with James Delorme the other day, the chief of Klahoose, and he's all willing to do that. So now we just have to get a hold of Richard and see if he's on board. But yeah, we will shoot to have that a success. New administration building, I would love to tell you that we've made huge steps in progress on this. We haven't. Nothing more than I want than to be sticking the shovel in the ground to get it started, but we will hopefully get it started this year. Just with that, while we're waiting for the new administration building to be built, we have so much opportunity happening all around us with Catalyst, with Vancouver Island University, and other business entities. But the thing that we're bumping into is we're bumping into issues of having proper space to hold these training sessions. And so one of the ideas that we've been kicking around is the idea of leasing a number of portable units, trailers. So we've been offered a couple of free ones, but they're pretty ratty and old. So I think we'd be more interested in looking at something new or newer to lease. So thinking about getting about maybe 4 or 5, possibly even 6 of these to develop a training center that we'd be able to host a number of these functions. And a number of these functions are often shared with other nations. So that could be Klahoose, Homolko, Seychelles, island nations. So there's a wide demand for that, and I think Walter's program really tailors to that, the finesse program. So we will try to pursue that and to try to hold on to some of these training opportunities, so we don't have to send people all over the map here to get this training. We can do a lot of it here at home. Just wanted to quickly update you on the working groups in case you're not aware. The treaty work has started and has been going for a few months now. There's 3 key working groups that are working now. Finance group is working on the key financial laws, which will be required to be in place when treaty comes into effect, April 2015. Lands and Resource Working Group, also developing laws around lands and resources. And governance. Governance is going to be setting up the structure of what and how the Sliammon government will operate, what it'll look like, what the functions will be. So there's some really key work happening in the background, and each of the working groups have treaty staff, legal rep, band staff, community members, and we try to keep people up to date in the NEMO newsletter, just trying to keep people up to speed. And we, as far as I know, we welcome anyone to come and observe. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to contact the treaty office, and they'll let you know the date of the next meeting. One part that I missed was the joint steering committee. So there's these 3 working groups. So I mentioned the finance, lands, resources, and the governance. All these 3 working groups, to try to keep the progress moving on these working groups, all report to a joint steering committee that has a number of councillors on there, myself, and treaty board of directors. So overseeing the work and approving some of the, sensitive and important wording that happens before we recommend any wording into any laws. One thing that is not a nice thing to report, but I could only give you a really brief update on this, is regarding our former CAO. There was a unanimous vote by Chief and Council to follow up on some happenings with one of our former CAOs. So our legal counsel was waiting for direction on this for quite some time, and we finally unanimously voted to go with the charges, to pursue the charges that our legal counsel has recommended. So that was only unanimously passed at the last duly convened council meeting, I believe was May 9th. Youth Council. I want to mention the Youth Council. I think squinting away here, I see Drew in the background. So the Youth Council, I tried to do an earlier version of the Youth Council, put out a posting, and was hoping to have some names sent to me for a Youth Council. And I think the youth were a little standoffish of the long-winded politicians, I guess. and they never really responded. The only person that really responded was Drew. Drew was the only formal response that we received from the Youth Council. And so with that, Rod and I met with Drew and just asked him and said, maybe the youth would respond to you seeking participants on your Youth Council instead of Chief and Council looking for this, because I guess it looked like we were probably trying to demand or send them in a direction maybe that they don't want to be heading in. So Drew did work with us, and he did send out a posting, and I believe we have a youth council that has about 10 members on it now. And one of the initiatives that the youth council is pulling together is the next community day of action, and we've asked them if they could do that to just have more of the youth involved, so that that session becomes not only a community session, but also sending some strong messaging to the youth and their families, and just trying to encourage family participation in that day. So really looking forward to seeing how that project will work, and we're not totally abandoning Drew. We'll come in as required, as needed. I know that the Sliammon Justice Program has some funds to help with that day, and we definitely want to participate wherever. That's just it's to the youth council. So please feel free to call on us. We will come to help. And just in closing, one event that I want to mention is this Thursday, is the Sliammon Education Celebration. I just asked the members of Chief and Council and also the community members to come out and celebrate the achievements of the Sliammon youth from the K to 12. It's an awards day that we've been trying to keep going, and I think we're on year 4 or 5. I think it might be year 5. Yeah, year 5. So it's been very successful. Many of the youth I've been told have been kind of planning their year around this. So it's having a really positive effect. So what it is there's some of the students who have the higher marks that are on the honor roll are rewarded. They're paid, and I can't remember what the scale is off of the top of my head, but the amount of money is growing. So it's working somewhat. So it's like, please come out and enjoy the celebration with the youth council. I don't really have anything else to share, but I'll just close it off with that. Thank you. One thing that I forgot to mention is there's a new health executive director been recently hired by the health board. So I believe her name was Cynthia Jameson. She's coming to us from the island somewhere, I believe the Victoria area. So I believe the start date, if I can remember off the top of my head, is May 27. So May 21? Okay, May 21 or 27, whichever, 27. But we're happy to have that position filled because we, I guess, poached Steve away.
In addition to committing to getting this year's audit done on time, we've also committed not to let health fall apart, and we have the new ED coming now anyway. But that was a big consideration in Steve moving over, that we were not going to allow that to be a big problem for health. So the next order of business, unless there was anything else for Clint, because these were actually questions for you.
Oh.
But anyway, is the appointment of the auditor. So for the coming year, or the year that actually has just ended, because we're now doing the 2012-2013 audit, we are recommending a new firm, and there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. And if you agree to that, then I want to thank Linda very much for her service to this point, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we part ways forever. One of the reasons is a notion of changing your auditor periodically. So it's kind of like the RCMP, so that the auditor doesn't get too comfortable, and collusion can occur and those sorts of things. So regardless, what Chief and Council are recommending and I'm recommending is that we go with KPMG for the coming year. And I would like to ask for a motion to appoint KPMG as our auditor for the 2012-2013 year. Is anybody prepared to make that motion? Steve? Oh, then I guess you can second. And can I have a show of hands of in favor? Against? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. So the KPMG branch or whatever office that we're dealing with is a fellow named Peter Ranson, and he has done some work with the nation in the past. And I think he'll do a fine job for us, as Linda has, and look forward to working with him. And if anyone has any questions on that, please feel free. Business? Is there any new business, financial statement related business that anybody would like to put on the floor? Look for a motion to adjourn. Steve? Where's Bruce? And seconder? Was there a second? Louise. And all in favor? If anyone's against, tough.